The photograph in Judge Judy Sheindlin's hands sent shockwaves through her normally steady composure. Inside her Manhattan courtroom, a simple inheritance case about a grandmother's jewelry box transformed into something far more personal. As she studied the aged black-and-white image, her sharp eyes caught a detail that stopped her mid-sentence. There, in the corner of the photo, stood a woman she'd seen countless times in her own family albums. Her mother. The morning started like any other in Judge Judy Sheindlin's Manhattan courtroom. The case before her seemed routine. Mitchell versus Mitchell, a family dispute over an antique jewelry box worth approximately $5,000. Aaria Mitchell, a 35-year-old elementary school teacher, claimed rightful ownership through her father's will. Her cousin James Mitchell, a 42-year-old accountant, insisted the box belonged to him through a verbal agreement with their grandmother Rose. As Judge Judy reviewed the case file, something about the dates caught her attention. Rose Mitchell had passed away 6 months ago at age 92, but the documentation showed inconsistencies that nagged at the judge's practiced eye. The jewelry box in question sat on the evidence table, its ornate Victorian craftsmanship drawing everyone's gaze. The rich mahogany would bore the subtle marks of age, with brass fittings that had developed a distinguished patina over decades. Aaria Mitchell stepped forward first, her hands clasped tightly as she described finding the box in her father's study after his sudden death 3 months ago. Her testimony painted a picture of Sunday afternoons spent with her grandmother, learning about each piece of jewelry and the stories behind them. But when she mentioned Rose's marriage in 1948, Judge Judy's pen paused mid-note. James Mitchell's account contradicted his cousin's version of events. He spoke of private conversations with Rose, of promises made during long hospital visits in her final days. His voice carried the weight of certainty as he produced a handwritten note, dated just weeks before Rose's death. But something about the family timeline wasn't adding up. The bailiff brought forward additional evidence, a stack of old photographs, letters, and documents found inside the box's hidden compartment, discovered during the court's preliminary examination. As Judge Judy began to sort through these items, her judicial objectivity faced an unexpected challenge. Among the papers lay a marriage certificate from 1943, 5 years before Rose's supposed wedding date. The names listed sent a jolt of recognition through her body. The courtroom's familiar rhythm faltered as Judge Judy held up a particular photograph, her eyes narrowing at details that suddenly seemed too familiar to be coincidence. What had begun as a straightforward inheritance dispute was about to expose a family secret that would shake not only the Mitchell family tree but Judge Judy's own understanding of her family history. The truth hidden within that antique jewelry box would prove more valuable than any gems it might have held. Judge Judy's careful examination of the marriage certificate revealed details that sent ripples through her professional composure. The document listed Rose Mitchell's maiden name as Rose Blumenthal, a name that stirred long-buried memories from Judge Judy's childhood conversations with her mother. The certificate recorded a marriage to Samuel Cohen in 1943, yet all the Mitchell family records claimed Rose had married Thomas Mitchell in 1948 as her first and only marriage. The courtroom's atmosphere shifted as Judge Judy began her cross-examination. She held up the marriage certificate, its aged paper crackling beneath her fingers. Aaria Mitchell's face showed genuine confusion. This revelation clearly contradicted everything she knew about her grandmother. James Mitchell sat forward, his previous confidence wavering as family histories began to unravel. Judge Judy directed her attention to the jewelry box itself, now viewing it with new significance. Her trained eye noted the Star of David subtly carved into its base, barely visible beneath years of polish and wear. The bailiff carefully removed each item from the box's hidden compartment under her direction. Letters postmarked from Brooklyn in the early 1940s, photographs of a young Rose with a dark-haired man who wasn't Thomas Mitchell, and a small diary written in a mixture of English and Yiddish. The diary entries painted a picture of wartime New York, of a young Jewish couple's life cut short when Samuel Cohen shipped out to Europe in 1944. The last entry, dated December 1945, contained a War Department telegram announcing Samuel's death in Germany. 6 months later, Rose discovered she was carrying his child, a secret she would keep even after marrying Thomas Mitchell in 1948. As Judge Judy read portions of the diary aloud, her voice carried the weight of recognition. The neighborhoods described were the same ones her mother had talked about. The synagogue mentioned was where her own grandparents had worshipped. The coincidences mounted until they could no longer be ignored. Aaria Mitchell produced additional family photos from her evidence folder, including one of Rose's wedding to Thomas Mitchell. Judge Judy's hands trembled slightly as she compared it to a photograph from the hidden compartment. The young woman in both photos was undeniably the same Rose, but the earlier image showed her standing beside Samuel Cohen, and among the wedding guests, Judge Judy spotted her own grandmother's face. The implications of these documents reached far beyond the simple question of inheritance. Through careful questioning, Judge Judy established that neither cousin knew about Rose's first marriage or the circumstances that led to her keeping such secrets. The story emerging from the evidence suggested that Rose's first husband's child, the one mentioned in her diary, had been raised as Thomas Mitchell's own, creating a web of relationships that now threatened to reshape multiple family trees. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Judy held up one final photograph from the box. In it, two young women stood arm in arm outside a Brooklyn tenement. Rose Blumenthal Cohen and Aaria Blumenthal, Judge Judy's own mother. The connection was undeniable, the truth unavoidable. This inheritance dispute had just become intensely personal, forcing Judge Judy to confront not only questions of legal ownership but the very nature of family itself. The gravity of the situation demanded a brief recess. In her chambers, Judge Judy pulled out her phone and quickly dialed her sister's number. The conversation confirmed what the photographs had suggested. Their mother Aaria had indeed grown up in the same Brooklyn neighborhood as Rose Blumenthal. They weren't just neighbors, they were best friends who had made a pact to protect each other's secrets during the turbulent years of World War II. Back in the courtroom, Judge Judy's questioning took on new purpose. She asked Aaria Mitchell about her father, the man she had always known as James Mitchell Sr., Thomas Mitchell's eldest son. The dates in Rose's diary aligned perfectly with his birth in 1946, mere months after she received news of Samuel Cohen's death in Germany. The truth crystallized. James Sr. wasn't Thomas Mitchell's biological son, but rather Samuel Cohen's child, born into a secret that would span generations. James Mitchell's face showed the gradual dawning of understanding as he realized the implications. His father, Richard Mitchell, was Thomas Mitchell's biological son, born 3 years after the marriage. This made him and Aaria not first cousins as they'd always believed, but half-cousins, connected by Rose's marriage to Thomas but not by blood. The jewelry box's significance transformed before their eyes. The hidden compartment hadn't just preserved old photographs and letters. It had protected the truth of Rose's first love, her heritage, and the child she had carried in secret. Each piece of jewelry inside held a story: a pearl necklace from Samuel before he shipped out, a gold bracelet from Thomas Mitchell that matched the one in their wedding photo, tiny baby rings belonging to both James Sr. and Richard. Judge Judy shared her own memories, breaking judicial protocol in light of the extraordinary circumstances. She recalled her mother's stories about Rose, though she had never made the connection until now. Aaria Blumenthal and Rose had worked together at a local department store, sharing lunches and dreams until the war changed everything. When Rose received news of Samuel's death, it was Aaria who helped her through the darkness of grief, who stood by her side as she built a new life with Thomas Mitchell. The courtroom gallery had grown fuller as word spread about the unfolding drama. Court officers had allowed in several elderly residents from the Brooklyn neighborhood who remembered the Blumenthals and Mitchells. One woman, Mrs. Goldstein, now in her 90s, stepped forward to add her testimony. She remembered Rose and Aaria as young women, remembered the day Samuel Cohen left for war, and the day the telegram arrived. Her words painted a picture of a community bound together by shared joys and sorrows, of secrets kept not out of shame but out of love and protection. DNA results arrived, rushed through by the court's request, confirming what the documents had suggested. Aaria Mitchell carried the genetic markers of both Jewish and Irish ancestry, while James Mitchell's DNA told a simpler story of Irish heritage through the Mitchell line. The science supported what the photographs and diary had revealed. Rose's first marriage to Samuel Cohen had produced a son who would be raised as a Mitchell, creating a complex tapestry of family ties that now included Judge Judy herself. As the truth settled over the courtroom, the original dispute over the jewelry box seemed trivial compared to the wealth of family history it had contained. Aaria and James Mitchell sat closer together now, their earlier antagonism forgotten as they began to process their shared history. Judge Judy watched them, seeing echoes of Rose and her mother Aaria's friendship in the way the cousins now leaned toward each other, united by revelation rather than divided by inheritance. The court officer returned with additional records from the Brooklyn Historical Society. Among them were synagogue membership lists from the 1940s, showing both the Blumenthal and Cohen families as regular congregants. Property records revealed that Rose and Samuel Cohen had purchased a small apartment on Ocean Avenue, just 3 blocks from where Judge Judy's family had lived. The connection between these families ran deeper than anyone had imagined. Judge Judy examined a series of letters between her mother Aaria and Rose, dated throughout the 1950s and 60s. The correspondence revealed a lifelong friendship that persisted even after Rose moved to Queens with Thomas Mitchell. The letters spoke of children's birthdays, holiday celebrations, and careful references to our secret, a shared burden these women carried for decades. Judge Judy recognized her own childhood memories in these pages. Unexpected visits, hushed conversations between her mother and a woman she knew only as Aunt Rose. Aaria Mitchell's father, James Sr., now 78 and living in Florida, joined the proceedings via video call. His shock at learning about his biological father was tempered by decades of love for the man who had raised him. Thomas Mitchell had known the truth from the beginning, choosing to raise Samuel Cohen's son as his own out of love for Rose. James Sr. shared memories of Thomas teaching him to ride a bike, attending his baseball games, and walking him down the aisle at his wedding. Acts of fatherhood that transcended biology. The jewelry box yielded more secrets as experts carefully examined its construction. Behind the hidden compartment, they discovered another chamber containing Samuel Cohen's military medals, posthumously awarded for bravery in combat. A small notebook held Rose's private thoughts as she watched her son grow up looking more like Samuel every day. Her joy mixed with heartache as James Sr. inherited his biological father's artistic talent and gentle demeanor. DNA results brought forward unexpected connections. The genetic markers showed that Judge Judy's maternal grandfather and Samuel Cohen were distant cousins, explaining the familiar features she had noticed in old photographs. This discovery linked all present parties in ways that went beyond the simple family tree they had known. Aaria and James Mitchell weren't just fighting over an inheritance. They were part of a larger family tapestry that included Judge Judy herself. Court archivists uncovered marriage records showing that Thomas Mitchell's family had changed their name from O'Malley upon arriving from Ireland in the 1920s. In post-war New York, Thomas had recognized the challenges Rose faced as a Jewish widow and offered not just marriage but a chance to blend their families into America's melting pot. His acceptance of her son and her past spoke to a love that defied the prejudices of their time. The investigation revealed patterns of protection and sacrifice that spanned generations. Rose had kept her first marriage secret to shield her son from the pain of losing a father he never knew. Thomas Mitchell had guarded this truth to give his adopted son a chance at a simpler life. Judge Judy's mother Aaria had maintained her silence out of loyalty to her friend, even as their children grew up alongside each other, unaware of their connection. Mrs. Goldstein provided additional context about the tight-knit community that had surrounded these families. She remembered the day Rose and Thomas announced their engagement, how the neighborhood had rallied around them, understanding without words the complexity of their situation. The local rabbi had blessed their union privately, acknowledging the unusual circumstances while affirming the sanctity of their commitment to each other and to James Sr. As each new piece of evidence emerged, the simple inheritance dispute transformed into a profound exploration of family bonds, sacrifice, and the quiet heroism of previous generations. The Mitchell cousins began to understand that the true inheritance wasn't the jewelry box or its contents, but the legacy of love and protection that had shaped their family's journey. Judge Judy sat silent for several moments, the weight of history heavy in her courtroom. Her eyes moved from the jewelry box to the photographs, then to Aaria and James Mitchell, who now sat together on the plaintiff's bench, their earlier animosity forgotten in the wake of revelation. The time had come to address the extraordinary circumstances that had transformed a simple inheritance case into a pivotal moment in multiple families' histories. Rising from her chair, Judge Judy removed her judicial robe. This action, unprecedented in her decades on the bench, signaled the shift from legal authority to family member. She stepped down from the bench, bringing with her the photograph of her mother and Rose Blumenthal in their youth. The courtroom remained absolutely silent as she approached the cousins. She shared a personal memory she'd kept private until now. On her mother's deathbed 3 years ago, Aaria Blumenthal Sheindlin had whispered about a promise made to her dear friend Rose, a secret she'd carried for over half a century. Judge Judy hadn't understood the significance then, but now the pieces aligned with crystal clarity. Her mother had been Rose's confidant, protector, and witness to a love story that spanned war, loss, and renewal. The DNA results had confirmed what the document suggested. Judge Judy and Aaria Mitchell shared genetic markers through the Cohen family line. They weren't just judge and plaintiff. They were family. This connection legally required her recusal from the case, but not before she could help heal the rift that had brought them all together. More family members arrived at the courthouse as news spread. James Sr. had flown in from Florida after the video call, wanting to be present for this moment. His presence added another layer of emotion as he saw his own father's military medals for the first time. The elderly Mrs. Goldstein shared stories about Samuel Cohen's bravery, both in war and in the neighborhood, painting a picture of the father he never knew. Thomas Mitchell's decision to raise James Sr. as his own son emerged as an act of extraordinary love. The jewelry box contained letters Thomas had written but never sent to Samuel Cohen, thanking him for his service and promising to care for his son and wife. These letters revealed Thomas as a man of remarkable compassion, who understood that family bonds transcend blood relations. Judge Judy gathered the extended family, the Mitchells, the Sheindlins, and the remaining community elders, into her chambers. She explained that while she must officially recuse herself from the inheritance case, she could offer something more valuable: the truth about their shared history and the opportunity to reunite a family divided by time and circumstance. Aaria and James Mitchell made their own decision, rendering the legal proceedings moot. They would share custody of the jewelry box, taking turns displaying it at family gatherings as a symbol of their reconnected family. More importantly, they began planning regular family reunions, determined to bridge the gaps created by decades of secrets. The climactic moment came when Judge Judy revealed one final document from her personal records, a photograph taken at her own bat mitzvah, showing Rose Mitchell standing next to her mother, both women beaming at the young Judy Sheindlin. The image captured the enduring connection between these families, a bond that had persisted even when its origins remained hidden. As Judge Judy prepared to officially recuse herself, she held up the original photograph that had started this journey of discovery. The image of two young women, arms linked, standing brave against the uncertainties of wartime New York, now represented not just a friendship, but the foundation of a family legacy that would continue for generations to come. The following weeks brought remarkable changes to both families. The Mitchell family home in Queens became a gathering place every Sunday, with Aaria and James Mitchell taking turns hosting dinners that grew larger each week as more relatives discovered their connection. The jewelry box sat prominently displayed in the living room, no longer a source of conflict but a testament to their extraordinary family history. Judge Judy's sister organized a formal family reunion, bringing together over 60 people ranging from elderly neighbors who remembered Rose and Samuel to the youngest generation of Mitchells, Cohens, and Sheindlins. James Sr. spent hours studying his biological father's military medals, learning about Samuel Cohen's heroic actions in Germany. His own grandson, a budding artist, had inherited the same creative talent that had once flowed through Samuel's veins. The Brooklyn Historical Society created a special exhibition about wartime romance and family bonds, featuring Rose and Samuel's story. Their narrative became part of a larger historical record about love, sacrifice, and the complex ways families adapted during and after World War II. The exhibition included the original marriage certificate, photographs, and letters, carefully preserved to inspire future generations. Aaria Mitchell discovered she had inherited more than just the jewelry box. Going through her father's old sketches, she found artistic talent that mirrored her grandfather Samuel's work. She began taking art classes, feeling connected to a heritage she never knew she possessed. James Mitchell, meanwhile, started researching his Irish roots through Thomas Mitchell's family line, appreciating the rich dual heritage that circumstance had given them. Mrs. Goldstein's memories became the foundation for a community oral history project. Her stories about the Brooklyn neighborhood where these families had lived painted a vivid picture of a time when communities came together to protect and support each other. The local synagogue where Samuel and Rose had married held a special service honoring the family's reconnection and the memory of those who had kept their secrets out of love. Judge Judy found herself making regular visits to the Mitchell family gatherings, no longer as a legal authority but as a cousin and friend. She shared stories about her mother Aaria, helping James Sr. understand more about the woman who had been her friend's secret keeper. These conversations brought healing and understanding to both families, bridging gaps that had existed for decades. The jewelry box revealed one final secret during restoration, a hidden letter from Rose to future generations, explaining her choices and expressing hope that someday her family would understand. Her words spoke of the profound love she had for both Samuel and Thomas, and her gratitude for a community that had helped her navigate impossible choices during difficult times. The letter ended with a simple message: love makes a family, in all its beautiful forms. 1 year after the courtroom revelation, Judge Judy stood in her Manhattan apartment, holding a framed photograph that now told a much deeper story. The image captured 4 generations of family members at their most recent gathering: James Sr. teaching his great-grandson to draw, Aaria Mitchell sharing Rose's recipes with Judge Judy's daughter, and James Mitchell documenting everything for the family archive they'd created together. The jewelry box had found its permanent home in a custom-built display case that traveled between households every few months. Each time it moved, family members added new mementos alongside Rose's original treasures. A recent addition was a letter from Thomas Mitchell's great-niece in Ireland, who had connected with the family after learning their story. She shared tales of Thomas's childhood and the strength of character that had led him to embrace Rose's past so completely. The Brooklyn Historical Society's exhibition had grown into a permanent installation, drawing visitors from across the country interested in stories of wartime romance and family reunification. Judge Judy occasionally spoke at these events, sharing how a routine inheritance case had unveiled a legacy of love, sacrifice, and redemption. Her perspective as both judge and family member offered unique insights into how truth, even long buried, could heal rather than harm. In her private moments, Judge Judy often reflected on her mother Aaria's role in this generational story. The friendship between Aaria Blumenthal and Rose Mitchell had created a foundation of trust and loyalty that eventually brought their families back together. Their secret-keeping hadn't been about shame or deception, but about protection and survival in a time when such choices carried enormous weight. The case had changed Judge Judy's approach to family court. While maintaining her trademark direct style, she now looked more deeply at the family histories behind each dispute. She understood better than ever how past decisions, made with love and hope, could ripple through generations. Her experience had taught her that sometimes the greatest inheritance wasn't found in objects or documents, but in the stories and bonds that connected people across time. On what would have been Rose's 100th birthday, the extended family gathered at her favorite park in Queens. As sunset painted the sky in shades of gold, they shared stories, photographs, and memories both old and new. The legacy she had created, through love, loss, and renewal, had transformed from a hidden history into a celebration of family in all its complex, beautiful forms. Judge Judy watched her relatives, once strangers, now bound together by understanding and acceptance, and knew that some courtroom victories weren't measured by legal decisions but by the healing of hearts and the bridging of lives once separated by silence.